Dietitians say pregnant women who lead unhealthy diets may be putting their children at risk of not developing well in the long term. Abby Courtenay from Nutritional Solutions supports the statement. In light of February being Pregnancy Month, she joins us in studio now to talk a little bit about nutrition during pregnancy. Good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thanks, Leanne. Thanks so much for having me.
So this is, it's something we've been hearing about for a very long time, is that try and maintain a healthy diet when you are pregnant. But the long-term effects on your child, that's something I don't think women really think much about.
I think it's so important to remember that your diet before you fall pregnant, as well as during your pregnancy, can actually affect your child through something called fetal programming. So it has very far-reaching effects, things that we've never thought of before. So in terms of obesity or high blood pressure in children, and as you grow older as well, and even your risk of having things like diabetes, so your pre and post conception diet seems to play a huge role in that.
Yeah. So when we talk about good nutrition before, so we'll talk about during, if you're trying to fall pregnant, and there are a lot of women out there that do struggle to fall pregnant, can we attribute a little bit of the blame to perhaps a very unhealthy eating lifestyle?
I think so. What happens is, unfortunately, in South Africa, most women have actually got quite a poor diet if you look at the general population. So there's a lot of fast food, there's a lot of convenience foods, and if you think of those foods, what they all have in common is that they're very high in energy, but they're very poor in nutrients. So what happens is the woman is essentially malnourished, if you think about it, not in terms of her weight, because her weight might be normal or she might even be overweight, but in terms of her micronutrient intake. So what a woman, especially pre-pregnancy, needs to focus on is something like folic acid. It's something that is often lacking in the diet. It comes from a lot of dark green leafy vegetables, avocados, those types of things, which are high quality foods. Now, if your diet is filled with sort of breads and takeaways and chocolates and sweets and such, you're not getting that. And unfortunately, in the first few weeks after a woman has fallen pregnant, she probably doesn't even know it.
Yeah.
And it's in those first few weeks that it's so critical that you get enough of this folate, for example, which actually helps the spine just to close a little bit and prevent neural tube defects, things like spina bifida, and that is something that women need to be aware of. So I encourage all women of childbearing age to take either a multivitamin that has got a folic acid or a folate supplement in it, or as soon as you find out that you're pregnant, you start taking one. To improve that micronutrient status.
I remember that being sort of the very first bit of advice that anybody gives you is just take folic acid. And now we understand why. We understand the benefits of all of that.
Exactly.
However, it's easy for me to pop up to the pharmacy and go and get that, and it's easy to go to the vegetable shop and do a healthy diet. But there are a lot of women living in rural areas that don't have access to all of this. How do you recommend that they try and incorporate this folic acid into their lives and into their diets?
Well, I think the biggest thing there to focus on is really to include a variety of healthy whole foods in their diet. So even in the rural areas, what we'll be focusing on there is sort of, like I said, your dark green leafy vegetables, your morojos, your spinaches, those types of things.
Okay.
So to focus less on the processed and convenience foods and more on the whole foods, because that's where you're going to get your micronutrients from.
Yeah. Now, that was, as you're talking about, this is very much so before pregnancy to maintain this healthy diet. But once you find out you're pregnant, what are the stay away foods from? I was always confused about that because it's incredible. You go to 4 different people and you get 4 different opinions.
Yeah.
From your perspective, you have a master's in nutrition. When you're pregnant, in order to have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby, what do you recommend we eat?
Okay, so again, and I'm going to harp on this quite a lot, sort of whole foods, so that you can get a wide variety of micronutrients, because there's a variety of nutrients that are vital during pregnancy. So you're looking at things like your folic acid, iron, zinc. You're going to be looking at things like calcium and omega-3s. So those are the kinds of things you want to include, but the types of things that you want to exclude or probably stay away from would be anything that could make you sick. So if you think about it, if you're going to get sick, the probability of your baby getting sick is then a lot higher as well. So things like raw milk, raw fish, raw meats, those types of things. raw dairy products or unprocessed or unpasteurized dairy products will put you at a higher risk of getting something called listeria, which is a type of bacteria that can affect your baby, your unborn baby. So that would be, for example, unpasteurized goat's milk or feta cheese made from unpasteurized milks. Now, in South Africa, in our supermarkets, most of our feta cheeses, for example, are actually pasteurized, so normally quite safe for consumption, but the soft cheeses perhaps not. So it's always important just to check. Other things would be your sushi. You want to try and stay away from raw fish.
Okay.
Unless you know exactly where that fish comes from. But look, the reality is we don't.
You don't know. If you're eating at a restaurant,
exactly.
You really don't know.
So I'd rather err on this, the side of caution and say rather, let me stay away from this for now. It's for 9 months. It's not forever,
Yeah.
Obviously alcohol, a lot of doctors are recommending to moms to say, oh, look, in the second trimester, you can go ahead and continue to drink alcohol. And unfortunately, there is just no safe level of alcohol intake during pregnancy. And so I recommend against that. It really, again, it's not for forever and it's for a short period of time. Caffeine is something to be aware of, not necessarily to eliminate from your diet completely, but the current recommendation for caffeine intake in a pregnant woman is less than 200 milligrams. So that's about 2 cups of coffee a day.
Okay.
So you can still safely consume a little bit of tea, a little bit of sort of instant coffee or 1 or 2 filter coffees per day, and you should be okay.
Yeah.
But again, if it negatively impacts you, it makes you feel a bit strange, a little bit hyper, then rather cut it out.
So these are some tips that you're given, and just the one question I want to squeeze in, which is important, is the lasting effect on this baby, because obviously whatever you're putting in your body is going into this unborn child, and you want to ensure a proper development. But there are studies of late showing that a very unhealthy diet in the mother during pregnancy can have a long-term effect on this baby.
Yeah.
What effects are we talking about?
Okay, so what I think are the most common or the most prevalent effects that we're looking at the moment would be things like obesity, high blood pressure, diabetes, those types of things. So that's where we link back to that fetal programming, where it seems that if the mother overconsumes or underconsumes certain nutrients or certain micronutrients, can actually increase the child's risk of getting those later on in life. Now, what's interesting is we've got to try and break apart whether it's the lifestyle that the child leads after birth, or whether it's what's happening during the pregnancy, or whether it's a little bit of both. And I think that what we've got to do is we've got to teach moms to eat really well during their pregnancy, so that it spills over into their life after the pregnancy, so that the child basically also then learns healthy eating habits from the get-go. So it's not just let me eat well during my pregnancy. Yes, it's important for a whole bunch of nutrients, but let me continue to eat well to teach my child healthy eating habits, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to set them up for health and for basically good health later on in their lives.
Well, really interesting. Thank you for talking to us. I'm sure we've given a lot of tips out there to some women that want to fall pregnant or perhaps are pregnant, and what you should do to maintain a good, healthy diet for yourself and your child. Abby Courtenay, thank you so much for talking to us here on the program. Abby, of course, is a nutritionist. She's a dietitian and really has her master's in nutrition. So something that she takes very seriously is dieting during your pregnancy.